meeting for November 10th, 2014. I'm going to start with my mayor's statement. Notice this meeting has been provided in accordance with the Open Public Meetings Act by posting a copy of the agenda on the bulletin board at the municipal complex. Following a copy of the agenda in the Township Clerk at the municipal complex. Forwarding a copy of the agenda to the Rowan County Times and Carrier Post. Forwarding written notice to each person who has requested copies of the regular meeting schedule. All the above posting, filings, and mailings are taking place on the 7th day of November 2014. And with that, we're going to go into our workshop session. Mr. Pruitt, why don't you take it away?
You want to discuss schedule matters or official agenda?
Oh, should I skip over that?
Yeah.
Sorry, Chris. Our first thing will be any scheduling matters. Do any council members have something they would like to discuss as far as the scheduling matter goes?
Mr. Pruitt suggests there would be an email I saw specifically moving one behind the county, if we want to schedule something for that. And also I would request that we schedule something, just a separate meeting to talk about the order if possible. Or I thought it would be a good idea.
Okay.
Yeah, regarding the crime, I was going to bring this up later, but as anyone who's following the Burlington County Times or subscribes to the Township Nixle system knows, there have been some burglaries in town recently, both residential and commercial. The police department did a good job a couple weeks ago in arresting someone who was responsible for robbing gas stations and convenience stores in town. But last week we had a few more residential burglaries, and Ms. Jordan suggested having sort of a town hall meeting, perhaps at the UES, since a lot of the burglaries are on the east side of town. The majority of them are where the police would be able to answer questions, allay concerns, and provide some guidance and advice to residents. So we haven't set that up yet. We wanted to get council's feedback on that first, but we would like to do that in the next couple of weeks to have the police set that up.
Yeah, I think it's a great idea. I think we're move forward as fast as possible. That's just my opinion.
I would say Scott actually got a meeting together in regards to some folks that were really concerned about that about 2 weeks before the person was caught. And I called him one day, and that day we had a meeting. I'm glad that person was caught, but I'm glad that we're going to have a meeting very promptly.
We have a meeting.
And then regarding the water meeting, Greg, we're going to discuss water quality as item 2. And I believe your suggestion will be answered during that time. Is there any other scheduling matters for Victoria you'd like to bring up?
No.
Okay. Take a minute. Technical difficulties. Testing 1, 2, 3. Testing. Can you hear that? The issue is our recording system, while saying that it's recording, she doesn't hear any earphones, which would indicate that it is recording. So we say, we're going to set up our backup system to make sure we can record it. So just give us a minute. Okay, folks, we're back. Sorry for the delay. We're still at our workshop, and we'll extend the president request and presentation portion accordingly so that everyone has time to talk or speak. We left off with any amendments to the agenda. Do any council members here have any amendments to today's agenda?
No.
Okay, Scott.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. First item on the workshop is an update in regards to water quality issues that's in town right now. There's a couple steps that I want to discuss with council in terms of what we're going to be doing moving forward. I do think it's important that just to look back briefly, we did post on our website a timeline and a fact sheet along with a letter from the DEP saying that the water currently meets all federal and state water drinking standards. The fact of the matter is, and we're waiting for a response from DEP, is we know that it met those very same standards before we shut down well 7. In any case, Mr. Butler, myself, Mr. Ewers, have been working with our current utility engineer in looking at evaluating various treatment options. Treatment would be set up for well 7 and 9, and essentially eliminate not only 1,2,3 TCP, but any other potential hazardous compounds that are in those wells. In terms of costs and timeline, the engineers told us it could cost anywhere from $2.5 million upwards to $4 million. And I have talked to Mr. Michelle about financing that if we are working with the DEP for different funding sources. But if all of those fell through, Mr. Michelle assures me that our utility surplus would more than be healthy enough to handle the financing of this project.
Okay.
We're looking at a time frame of probably 12 to 18 months to get the treatment set up. But these are all elementary numbers until we actually decide on the direction we're going in. Both the cost and the time change for the better, for the worse, once we get our hands around that. Obviously, we want to work as quickly as possible. However, did want to discuss with council, and I had discussed with the mayor the idea of going out. Actually, I probably had conversations with all of you about looking for a consultant to work with the township specifically on this project. So not using our utility engineer, but getting someone that might have a little higher level of expertise. Mayor has suggested going out for RFPs, and I know we have RFPs as a discussion topic later on in the meeting. But considering the urgency to get this in as quickly as possible, I just wanted some feedback from council on that.
I think it'd be a great idea to go for RFP on this, just keep our eye on the ball and move forward expediently.
Yeah, I think it's good. It's a good idea to do an RFP for a consultant who is schooled in these types of matters. They have the education, background, the experience. Who can come to the meetings, answer questions. I'm not an expert in these things. I'm guessing nobody out there is an expert in these type of matters. So let's get an expert in to look at it and to discuss it and to help give us a plan. The timeline I'm not happy about. I want to tighten that up. I would like to see something in place. Clearly, we have to speak with the consultant, but I would like to have something in place by April or May. But as far as the concept goes, going out to our consultant, I'm fine with it.
Right, so then the idea, and we're still working with the DEP. They've been somewhat cooperative with us in this issue.
Could I comment on that? I wonder if we might go to the DEP and actually ask them to back the Drinking Water Quality Institute, which has not looked at this, it's my understanding, since 2009, and ask them to look at this emerging contaminant. I have information from Minnesota Department of Health, from California, from actually the Naval Sustainable Environmental Development Integration, which talks about treatment. A lot of information about this contaminant, and it seems that if we haven't looked at it as a state for some time, maybe the council could go and say, hey, we should do this, we should look at it as a state.
Well, I'm not going to answer that. I'm not an expert in this, and Greg, respectfully, neither are you. So let's get an expert in to discuss it before we start trying to set national policy on a compound we know nothing about, that the EPA has been studying for 30 years. The state has had a guidance on it for 20 years, but they haven't set an MCL. So let's get a consultant in who has the education and the background and experience with this, and let them tell us instead of us telling them. So I appreciate your, I don't know if you're agreeing or not agreeing, but I'm not going to start trying to become an expert in this field.
Well, just a quick question, is this expert going to come in as an expert on the remediation of the issue?
Well, what I would expect them to do is, yeah, exactly, tell us what needs to be done,
And
set
what,
forth the plan, then we can then turn to our sewer engineers to implement that plan as quickly as possible.
and what I was proposing is that we voice our concern generally with this, and that ask the DEP to look at this, since they haven't looked at it by my reading since 2009. And actually, that was to the chagrin, if you will, of the people who are on the committee on the Water Quality Institute that were looking at that. I just think that it would be good for us to say to the New Jersey DEP, can you go and look at this again as all these states, for instance, Minnesota has a report from 7/15/2010 that I easily found, is a good thing for us as a council.
Where'd you find it, Greg? Where'd you find it?
On the web, actually. I
Okay,
found the
this is
information from California on the
This is something I
web.
want to get into, and I guess we'll jump ahead, but, you know, we have an issue with this council, and we have an issue in general, with people coming in with stuff they downloaded off the internet, and they wave it around as if it's, you know, a fact. You know, if you're in a court of law, you can't just walk in and wave something around without there being a foundation, without there being, you know, the person who wrote the report ready to testify about their credentials. So I think we need to start instilling some of the New Jersey court rules of evidence in this chamber and start listening and start having the people here to actually discuss what they want to say, instead of having us, a bunch of council members, trying to quote reports and studies and everything else that we don't know anything about.
I wasn't aware we were in court. I thought we were in council.
I wish we
We
were,
have
but that's-
recommended things in the past to various bodies. This council has in 25 years, and this is just my recommendation. If no one else in the council wants to do it,
Well, I think what this council really wants to do is fix the problem. And, you know, I think we've been batting it around for weeks now, that, you know, oh yeah, we have a problem, you know, what's this level, what's that level, what's this, you know, let's just fix the problem. As simple as that. Let's just get an expert in and tell us what we need to do to fix it, and fix it. It's simple, you know, stop the jittering, we'll just fix it.
I mean, but you don't need my,
can I just
permission,
interject something about that, please?
you don't need my permission, Greg, to go talk to the DEP, or wherever you want to talk to, you know, so if you want to speak to the DEP, that's, as yourself, and not speaking for the council, you go right ahead. I'm fine with that.
Is that okay with you, Scott?
I'm fine, but I just was gonna ask you to clarify, because I don't think I understand what you're suggesting.
I'm suggesting the council write a letter suggesting that the New Jersey DEP, whom we pay taxes to, all of us, look into this and say, gee, you've not looked at this since 2009 and said anything about setting a maximum contaminant level. Would you go ahead and look at this, because certainly other states, and there's newer information about that. That's all I'm saying, a letter, an urgent, one. And two, I would point out that I have information on the Naval Sustainable, so the Navy's interested in this, Naval Sustainable Environmental Development Integration, who has looked at a ABI, if you will, treatment. That may be less expensive than some of the treatments I've said. So, I mean, there could be benefits to.
And I think any.
I don't think I've heard, Greg, whether you are for or against RFP for a consultant to come in and to, somebody with knowledge guide us through this process.
I am absolutely for getting 3 people who are in that area and vetting them and finding out the best one, which is standard business practice. I think that'd be a great idea.
All right, so we'll do that, and I just to circle back real quick on Greg's suggestion, I've had conversations with people from DEP, getting various different answers to the same question. What I'd like to do now is just quickly lay down who does what in these situations, because I think that's been one of the areas of confusion. We have a water utility, and we have a licensed water operator, water plant operator, who runs that utility. We have a utility engineer who works with the staff on various different engineering aspects for infrastructure for the utility. Bill does a great job in running the water utility. I don't think there's anybody up here that would debate that. You can't tonight because we didn't write those. But the state and the federal government are who we look to tell us what's safe and what's not safe.
It's not what we look.
The utility's job, Mr. Butler, his staff, and the engineer, their job is to implement that, make sure that we are meeting all state and federal guidelines. We have and we are. The state has no MCL on this one particular compact, neither does the federal government. My guess, based on what I've read and in talking to people at DEP and others, is, we have to put into context how we found out about this compound being in our water in well 7 up, why we found out about it, and what's going to happen nationally as a result of this program. There is a federal program that...
Yeah, we've talked about that.
Right, so that federal program is running to the end of next year. I talked to the manager of one of our neighboring towns last week. They haven't even begun monitoring. Once all that information is gathered by the end of next year, DEP will then collect it, EPA will collect it nationally. And they may, and I have to stress may, not definitely will, regulate this and any other compound that's being studied. I think both the state and federal government are moving forward with this. It's just going to take time. This council could certainly write a letter. Yeah, I mean, I don't know how good it will do, because there are people obviously that have
I
this.
watched a news conference when 2 assembly people have proposed legislation. You were there. So they're proposing a bill. So I'm not sure what a letter is gonna do if you have,
Many times, assembly people have joined in people who were from council, but as long as there's no harm done in this, and if you don't think it's something we're going to do, okay, it's just something I suggested. I don't want to waste the council's business time. Certainly it's a business. If you don't want to go forward, fine.
all right, Scott,
All right,
so we're
just to wrap this up.
Yeah, so we're running out of time, so let's wrap on water quality, let's get to other items so we can get to.
Yes, I mean, we actually have other important items to talk about. So
Okay.
council's authorized me to go for RFP for consultant.
Yep.
That consultant will work with staff professionals to identify the best treatment option.
Yes.
We'll come back, let council and the public know.
We'll let them report, and then
Right.
meet with the public, and let the public fill any questions they have about.
We'll have a harder budget and a harder timeline at that
Right.
point.
I request they be picked from 3 different people who
Well,
understand.
if we go for RFP, we can't control how many.
I don't see the virtue of eliminating it.
Okay. The next thing we have on the list is a website technology improvement update. I'm pretty excited. There's actually 2 things to discuss. I'm excited about both. I think both will be very good for the township. I'll start with the one that's more internal, because we do have other people here to discuss what's probably the more impactful of the 2. But internally, staff has been reviewing over the last several weeks different potential vendors for new software for our construction, zoning and planning department, community development. And I think we have narrowed down to a single vendor.
On the community development?
Yes.
No, it's nothing.
Right, so we're looking at, essentially what we're looking to be able to accomplish is have a couple of things. One, to enable residents residents, businesses in town, contractors, what have you, apply online for permits. Once they're online, once they're in our system, two very good things will happen. Internally, the information will move through the various inspection disciplines quicker, instantaneously. The paperwork will flow much more easily. The inspectors themselves will have tablets where they can do work actually out on the field, which will make them more efficient. They're not coming back here and typing up whatever notes they may have handwritten on the site. Probably more importantly will be that residents and contractors and businesses in town will be able to track their permits online. It's often that a contractor's supposed to do something, he's been told by our inspectors, he or she hasn't done that. The client, who's the resident, then calls the township saying, where's the permit? My architect, my contractor, whomever says it's sitting here, and 99 times out of 100 we explain, no, this is where it is, this is what your professionals have been asked for. This will hopefully mitigate that by a large amount. So resident does the permit for, let's say, a fence, all the information's in there, the resident can follow, and I'll even say an addition instead of a fence. The fence is simple. Say it's an addition, so it's gone from the electrical inspector to the plumbing inspector to the fire inspector. They'll be able to track it online, know exactly where they are. And it will not only include where they are, but any comments. So if there's an issue, the resident, the client will be able to know right away. So that's the first thing that we're working on. What we're hoping to tie that in with the larger project, and I know there's members of the T&T committee here, I want to thank for their involvement on this, and thank Victoria and Tom for their leadership on this, is, and it's on the agenda later tonight, we have come to, I believe, a unanimous decision amongst the T&T committee and all the staff that were involved on a new vendor for a new website. Wow. And since they did the work, I'll let Tom and Victoria discuss it more, and it's to not steal their thunder, because they've been both heavily involved in that.
Well, this has been something that's been sort of a background priority for the last couple of years. We've been hearing for a long time that people have a hard time with our websites, difficult to search. And, that's an important service for all of our residents to be able to find the information that they need easily on our website. And so the T&T committee has worked at this very tirelessly under Dimitri Schneiber, under his leadership, and they formed a subcommittee specifically for the website, and that subcommittee put in countless hours identifying vendors, interviewing vendors. I think they spent a whole day sitting here in the donut room conferencing with different vendors to help identify the one that was appropriate. They, especially with, Tom managed the process of, talking to our, internally to the staff of what their needs were on the back end. One of the problems with our current website was that they're having trouble updating it and kind of getting it to suit their needs. So the committee unanimously chose this vendor because it really does kind of tick off all of the check marks that we need, and I think we're going to have a really great product as a result.
So there is a resolution, consent agenda for council to approve a contract for Civic Plus for website redesign. I look forward to that. Next on the agenda for the workshop is a request for proposals. Separate from what we just discussed with the water quality consultant, it is that time of year. Reorg is 2 months away, and Patty and I wanted feedback from council on what process you guys would want to follow in terms of looking at professionals. The same 5 council members have been here all year. We're fortunately losing Kiaka next year. Mr. certainly within the realm of appropriateness for council to say on any of the professionals that you're happy with their product, but however council wants to go about choosing professionals for next year, now's the time that Patty needs to begin doing the paperwork for it.
And that process is fair or non-fair?
Those are all decisions council would make.
Right, but defining that would be the fair.
There's fair and open, and then there's, I guess it's funny, it's the phrase is non-fair, and which I guess it goes back to what I said before. If there are professionals that council is happy with, and they can move forward with those professionals, that's fine. A fair and open process would be to go out for RFP and let
Is that something you need to know right today? Because I think Stacy and Mr. Delgado should, have done that. I think we should use the process myself. We should go out for RFP for all the professionals.
If I could just add, in case the council aware, when the pay-to-play first came into place, we have our own ethics board, one of the few towns that have its own ethics board. The council staff and the ethics board at the time recommended that we use the non-fair and open whenever possible. I mean, you can actually have the option to choose, you can go either way, but they did recommend the non-fair and open. You can go either way.
Gotcha.
And you don't have to deal, you can deal with one group of professionals one way, the law is open that way.
Right. That's what we did last year.
No.
I think we actually went out for the,
Next year? Or the
Yeah.
year before? I thought we did go out last year because we were going to change every 2 years.
I just wanted people to know, it's not a, just because it sounds bad, non-fair and open, it's actually not bad.
Well, that's why I asked for the kind of clarification. I would want to go out for RFP for all professionals myself.
Would November 24th for this decision be too late for you, Scott, or would you like to start the ball rolling before that?
Patty intimated that she'd like to, Patty, of course, she's been right on top of things, but that she would like to get moving on this. If council's not ready to make that decision tonight, or would like to wait for Stacy.
Well, I guess my question is, I mean, if we went with non-fair and open as our ethics board suggested or recommended, that doesn't preclude us from examining other candidates.
Not at all.
And I definitely think we shouldn't just say, these are the people we have, we're keeping them all without any kind of proper, review and seeing what else is out there. But we can do that regardless of which.
Sure,
process we choose.
yes, and Patty's away till the end of the week, and what I'll have her do, because without her here, I don't think there's enough information for council to make a decision on. So why don't we do this? Wait till she gets back. I'll have her send out a memo to council and council-elect with the different options and the different timelines associated with those options.
Yeah.
If, for whatever reason, that something needs to happen before the 24th, we'll have to figure something out, whether it's hold a special meeting that would have to be advertised or what. But yeah, this is a decision that she's going to want direction from the five of you, and I don't include Chris. And then the other thing is just outstanding appointments, the same issue. Reorg council fills in where there are appointment openings for the boards and committees. As I mentioned a few of you before the meeting, in the last couple of weeks, we've had 2 openings on the library board. And I know that there's other boards and committees that have openings now, and certainly will have because terms are running out. So, once again, put some thought to it. I'll have Patty also include that in her memo, but she's going to want feedback on council on how we want to handle appointments to boards and committees.
Could I speak to that, Mr. Stewart?
Absolutely.
I believe I gave you a memo tonight, and I brought up other times that it would be good for our council to talk to the chairs of the committees and see who is going to continue and all those other recommendation of anybody they knew for seats that would be open, and also that we advertise in the paper and say, these are the committees that are of the town and the boards, and that we would like people to say that whether they were interested in those committees, because the form, the citizen commitment form, has to be filled out. And this would be kind of a good process to get people involved in the town and involved in committees. And I think it would be actually good and time sensitive for us to move forward with this, so in November, December, we can make decisions that we're kind of not bound off December and January. So we have a variety of people to pick from. And I've given you a kind of a memo that I sent to Scott on that. And I talked this a couple times in meetings, so I just wanted to propose that.
Bill or Tori, you want to weigh in on that?
Well, I'll agree with Mr. Newcomer, we should find out from the chairs of the committees who's up or who's not going to come back. Yeah.
Patty?
Yeah, I know we have a whole matrix of the terms, but it'd be also nice to know, if somebody's willing to be re-upped, or whether somebody who doesn't want to come back, or, because I know we've got several resignations in here already for next year, so maybe we can sort of vet that through the committees a little bit, and have the chairs of the committees just bring it by, the next few meetings, or next meeting they have, and then, we can move forward with that.
And in regards to the recommendations, like, I know the appearance committee is looking for specifically a landscape person, and they told me that a couple times, so the recommendations of the chair become an important component if we would ask them that portion too.
But not binding, just that.
No.
Just a
I'm not
recommendation.
binding, I'm not saying binding.
Because I believe it should be, it's still always a council decision, but there's absolutely nothing wrong with the chairs, if they know somebody or don't know their meetings, relaying that to us for consideration, absolutely.
Yeah. Put that out.
And if we could have, sorry, go ahead.
Leading up to
I'm
the
sorry.
next meeting, please reach out to our respective chairs and
Yep.
just see what their opinions are, if they have any recommendations.
That's great.
Go from there.
And the other part of advertising, I thought was, like getting newer people in the community or people from different parts of town is why, and I don't tend to know how we would advertise easily, but maybe it was just the article in the newspaper attached to say, and I will say, Michael Sanger, when he was mayor, had this, that whole idea as well, and I thought it was good.
It's
So,
okay, get out there.
all right.
Okay, we're gonna move into the workshop portion, which is called resident requests and presentations. If you are a resident, you have a request or a presentation, please come forward. Note the time, we are running late because we're not being on the agenda, but, come forward, state your name, and, you'll be heard.
Michael Babcock, 189 Highland Avenue. My presentation is basically about the water. You had sent me an email about meeting this morning. I emailed you back. I think a suggestion, the suggestion I put in the email, I think there's a whole lot of moving parts and a lot of things that have gone on in the last month. And there are a lot of people involved, and I know myself, I have a ton of questions. The biggest question, especially since Scott has already alluded to the costs involved in cleaning this up. Both Scott and you, Mr. Mayor, were quoted in Philly.com talking about a spill fund that we were applying to. I called the fund just to see the status of where it's at, because I'm wondering what's going on, and they informed me that we were denied at the beginning of the summer.
Right.
Did you know about that, or?
Yes, yes, I did.
Well, and I did put the timeline on the website to hopefully answer these questions. The knowledge of the spill compensation fund, the suggestion that we even apply for it was done, and I think you have the email from, it was Linda Walsh from DEP. We found out we got our readings back from the EPA monitoring program in 2013. Those readings are what they are. The TCP 123 was elevated. Mr. Butler goes to the DEP this past spring.
May 27th.
Right. Not to ask about the spill compensation fund. He's not aware of it. What he does is there's different variations of standards on how to monitor gonna monitor for this compound quarterly. Nobody from the DEP at that point has said anything that would cause any alarm, would make us consider closing the wells at the time. And because it's an unregulated compound, Bill's gonna do what is done typically in those situations, monitor it and see if it's going up, if it's going down, whatever. During the conversation with Linda Walsh in terms of what standard of monitoring he should do, because it is important to know too, that the one, he had done both, and the one standard it came up 0. There was no reading for TCP 1 through 3. She suggested, because we had it in the water, that he applied to the spill compensation.
Knowing that our samples were already too old to accept it, and that we would probably be denied.
But we didn't know that at the time.
Right.
So, working with our utility engineer, Remington Burning, Bill and Danielle Farrell from Remington Burning go through the application process. You're correct, in June, they received a letter basically saying, like you said, we were denied because it wasn't in on time. It wasn't because it was not because the application was not in on time. It was rejected because the test scores, the testing, the monitoring itself was stale. It was over a year old because, as I said earlier, there are some water sources that have not even begun monitoring. When the EPA monitoring program came out and said you have to monitor between January 2013 and December 2015, Mr. Butler did the responsible thing and began testing in the first quarter of the first year. So the test results, or the testing itself, the water samples that were tested were over a year old. That's my understanding as to why we were denied. It wasn't that Bill was sitting with an application on his desk for 10 months and said, oops, I better get this in.
And we're not precluded from applying January 1st when the new spill fund monies become available.
Well, not only that, when the conversations with the DEP ramped up at the end of September, beginning of October.
I can see that, I
When-
agree with a lot of what
Right.
you, but
Right, and they said, you know, we recommend you shut down the wells. They did, a lot of the conversation we had with them at the time was, we're going to help you with future funding. And they came up with a lot of ideas, like amending our contract with New Jersey American Water, which quite frankly I think is a terrible idea because the treatment's a one-time cost, where the New Jersey American Water increased cost to the ratepayers would be forevermore. And as I think a lot of us know now, New Jersey American Water's own 2013 water quality report had a TCP 123 score of 0.040. It was actually higher than ours. A lot of strange things have happened in this situation. But we are still working, Mr. Butler's working at, and it's a terrible acronym for this type of group. It's basically called the DEP's ICU, and Tony, if you remember what ICU stands for? Immediate Concern Unit, I think is what it is. But he is working with them on various funding sources.
Well, I spoke to Mr. Butler this afternoon, and last year in July 18th, the DEP sent a letter to Public Works, to Bill Butler, to 3rd Street, stating that we want you to quarterly monitor SOCs using this particular US EPA method, 504.1, because it's particular for 5 compounds, one of which is 1,2,3-trichloropropanone, and getting accurate readings, in addition to telling him to apply for the spill fund. I asked him what happened when you received that letter last year. He said, we never got the letter. So my question now is, okay, if we didn't get the letter, you're making this application this year. He said, we came across the letter, Danielle, as you spoke of, from Remington and Burning, if I'm saying it correctly, somehow got the letter and brought it to his attention, said she read it out from her office to his office, and dropped it basically on his desk and said, you know, I got this letter, we got this last year. And he said, I never got it. So in the application that he submitted, and I don't see anywhere from any emails from anyone, why isn't anyone upset, like, hey, we never got this letter? I mean, we're looking at a $2.5 million to $4 million payout from taxpayers, me, you, everybody who lives there. And we had the opportunity to get this money, grant money for free.
I just think we don't still have that opportunity.
Well, I don't know. That's
I'm telling you, we still have that opportunity.
every year it just kind of renews and starts all over again?
It starts the first come, first served basis. That's why you have to apply, by the time you're applying in July, the money's gone, do the math. I mean, if people are applying, it's January 1, their applications are ready to go. But my understanding is, and again, this is the issue, I'm not an expert here, but my understanding is we're gonna apply for it, early January to get as much.
I spoke to Ben Martin, who runs the fund, he didn't say anything about it.
Yeah,
I'm just saying, I called him.
Mr. Babcock, here's the thing, he's not here, and you're talking about a lot of people who aren't here also. So, I think we could go back and forth about this guy said this guy said that, this guy said that, here's an email, you know, I know you sent a couple emails, which, as a trial lawyer for 14 years, when I get one email of a big thread, I start questioning, well, what do the other emails say? So here, let me finish, you have a chance to talk, now it's gonna be my turn. We're gonna appoint a consultant to mediate the water, to come up with a plan to mediate the water. We're gonna then, tell our engineers to do it. We shut the well down, you know, in the water quality report that everybody was sent, it's right there, the information is right there. Yeah,
And it wasn't, yeah, and part of it wasn't.
And it was online, okay? So it's not like we were hiding the fact that it was in the water. You know, what went on, and these results were sent to the DEP in September of 2013. We finally pick up the phone May 27, 2014 and say, we sent you these reports and you didn't do anything.
I agree with that. I think the DEP has a huge responsibility,
Right.
Especially since, I'll allude to a conversation that you had with the guy, Gene Callahan, where basically Scott's saying, I'm not closing anything down. You either tell me it's bad for people or it's not bad for people. Just don't tell me maybe. Give me some definitives. Don't just tell me, yeah, well, let's.
Well, you and I
so,
agree there.
Yeah, so, and he still hasn't.
And I think you and I agree on most of it. But the reality is, people go around and around in circles and discuss, well, what happened here, what happened there? That's focusing on the problem. I want to now focus on the solution. The solution is appoint somebody who does this for a living. I don't do this for a living. I don't know what, I'm guessing.
I don't do it for a living.
Okay,
Mr. Babcock, may I respond, Mr. Babcock?
Sure.
Mr. Babcock, I have also in my research, which I'm not an expert, the mayor is not an expert on, but I also found in my research that in places where there is a spill, people do find the source of the spill rather than go to our state, our taxes, our funding. And the people who created this element were held to clean it up. And I hope that that's what we're looking for in the person that suggested we're hiring as well, that this person, whoever created, the company that created this 123 PCP will be held to and see if they pay rather than our tax if they pay.
I'm concerned about us paying. That's a large sum of money.
There's other funding sources besides the spill fund, and we're pursuing all of them.
Right.
Once, for example, if the spill fund at the state level spends $1 to fix an issue, they will go after the responsible parties. That's their job. And if someone's responsible for, in any way responsible, it's the way the statute is, for the discharge of hazardous substances, the spill fund has to spend money to clean it up. That person becomes liable to the fund to repay them. So if we got money, we're going to be looking for someone else to pay for this. If in the first instance the state has resources available, financial resources available for us to use to pay these costs, then the state will chase down the responsible parties, and we'll get the benefit of other money to help us pay this off, because frankly we shouldn't have to pay this off.
No, well, it's just, I alluded to what you just said as far as a responsible party, and I brought something to Bill's attention. I'm sure he's going to email you, and I'm trying to find where I found this site. I mean, we have a Superfund site that's right around the corner from my store on the Walby Road. That site that we're talking about doing the solar. It took 13,000 tons of dirt out of there. It used to be a fertilizer plant. That's what they mixed this stuff into. It was owned by PPG for 20 years. I contacted the person still running the site and remediating the site. She's going to be down here as of probably the next month or so, because she has to put a report out for 2015. Every 5 years, they got to reevaluate the site and consolidate what they did for the last 5 years of readings and stuff like that. I spoke to Bill and I sent him some stuff, and he's reading. He's like, "This place was a mess." Yeah, it really was a mess. They done stuff for 40 or 50 years all over the place. Now, there's a gentleman within DEP who lives in town that I had a conversation with. He kind of looked within DEP and said,
well, I'm not sure, but Bill is saying, yeah, I'm not sure the other way. There was a lot of stuff dumped in there, and at the back of that runs right up against where these wells are. So, I don't know, obviously, like you said, I'm not an expert, we're not experts, but there was a whole lot of stuff dumped on that site,
If
and
someone's contaminating the township's drinking wells, then if the town has to spend money to remediate, we're gonna pursue all the responsible parties to get the money back. If we're fortunate to get the state, because the state realizes that municipalities don't have the money to do this. But the state does, and that's why they created the spill fund. If the state makes those resources available to us, we will take advantage of them, and trust me, the spill fund will chase down the responsible parties.
so pretty much until the beginning of this summer, that letter that he never received, no one knew anything, because as far as the testing, he just continued to test like he
Well,
normally would.
there's two issues you're talking about. One is dealing with the day-to-day in terms of the presence of the contaminant, which was unregulated at the time, and still is. No one set a limit for how much should be in your water supply, or shouldn't be. So what we're dealing with now is the what is, which is we've detected it on this monitoring process that we participated in.
Right.
And we've identified it, and now what we're gonna do is come up with a strategy for eliminating it.
Well, I definitely do think, I mean, obviously, I'm sure everyone's read enough of it now that knows what it is. You know, it's not a nice, it's not a nice contaminant.
It's
And
not.
I would think that we as adults and council, and I know when I read it, I don't want to be drinking that. I don't want to be drinking any of it.
And you won't.
Yeah, I'm just saying, like, I don't need to wait till the EPA and legislators and a lot of, I feel like the legislation's being held, it's not getting done because of.
We're not waiting for
Not,
any
not,
of that.
yeah, not, yeah,
We're not waiting for any of that. In
Yeah.
fact, as soon as
We need to make that decision
we got the
ourselves.
heads up from the state through the federal government to start looking at, just go look and try to find this stuff, test for it. And if you identify it, tell us how much you find. And then we'll figure out a solution for it if there's enough of it in the water supply that should be dealt with. That's what we're doing.
Yeah, but like you said, all right, you had it on water quality report. I look at water, some stuff I know, some stuff I don't. You see trichloropropane at the end of the water report. Nobody knows what that is. You ever know? No. You know, it's not regulated, it doesn't say it's a violation, so you're not gonna look into it. But if, I think, like I said, I believe there's more responsibility to DEP, because they seem very wishy-washy on the whole thing. They have a responsibility, and I think you should have a meeting. I think one of these people that you've been emailing back and forth with DEP, one of them should be here to answer some of these questions.
DEP is
A
absolutely
Karen Fell or a Dr. Gloria Post, who I've been emailing back and forth with for the last couple of weeks. It's been really helpful. She's gotta be mad with all the research that she has and all the information she has and how bad this is, and nobody will listen to her and no one will pass legislation.
Mrs. Babcock, that's why I suggested we write a letter as well, saying not just that,
Yeah, like
we could
10,000
write a letter too, and saying, can somebody come and tell us who the scientist was who said to shut down the well? I'd like to
I
get
mean, would
that.
they listen to you? I mean, if you called them or you as a mayor or say, hey, you know, you caused a mess and now I got all these emails, I got comments from these people, you know, he's telling us to shut the wells down, and you're like, well, give me a reason.
We've tried that. We've had nothing but nonstop dialogue with them since we call it Friday afternoon email, where they recommended we shut down the wells, wells 7 and 9. But it doesn't go anywhere.
Well, look, I mean, really, this is a statewide issue. DEP deals with it on a statewide basis.
Right.
EPA deals with it on a national basis. So, and states have the ability to set their limits. The state has known about this contaminant for a long time, a very long time.
Right.
Here we are in, end of 2014, there still isn't an NRC for this.
Right.
So it really is up to the state to come up with a limit, if they do it. And if they do it, then everyone's gonna have to adhere to
It'll
it.
be a good thing.
But also keep in mind, when you look at these consumer confidence reports, you look at these contamination investigation studies and results, the state has you start to look for these types of things in your water supply on an extremely conservative basis. Sometimes as water supplies get tested, new compounds are identified all the time.
A lot of it's the testing methods too, we got much better testing methods as well.
That's right, but they'll set a limit that is extremely conservative, so that, you're not in a situation where it becomes a public health crisis and then you have to respond to it because an entire water supply is completely contaminated and undrinkable. There is a number of substances in public water supplies that we already test for, that we already regulate, that we already treat for. Unfortunately, some pretty nasty stuff. And unfortunately, as time goes by, the feds and the state, they try to get ahead of the curve and they see more and newer things coming along and they want you to test for them too. But they'll come up with numbers, and they have come up with numbers that are extremely conservative. So that the 0.03 or 0.06 or whatever numbers that we come up with, they're talking in parts per billion, and they're dealing with risk factors that involve decades of exposure to huge quantities of this stuff, and then examining potential risks, health risks as a result.
Well,
of
some
that.
tests are,
And then it's a one in a million
some
chance.
tests are like that, and then I got this lawyer close to saying, well, it's, in early stages of life, meaning like babies, and I'll give you an example.
But you look at those
Like
quantities you
someone-
would need.
And we're
When
spending-
you go around and
Yeah, Mr. Bethel, let's,
Who is Gloria Post, I'm sorry?
She's this doctor who wrote the book for the EPA, basically on this stuff.
Oh, DEP.
She's DEP,
Is she a scientist?
yeah, she's a scientist and a doctor and all, and I agree with what you're saying as far as, with the levels and everything like that, but they really don't know all the answers, and obviously, a lot of states are starting to set MCLs, and I just don't think we should wait.
Well, all that being said, we're moving forward to fix it.
Being proactive and knowing that this contaminant, and like I said, you read about it, it's not gonna go away by itself. It falls down to the aquifer, and it sits there. It doesn't dissipate, it doesn't get lower, it just sits there until you remove it. So at the time of discovering it, knowing that, proactive would have been, well, we know it's not gonna go anywhere, we're gonna have to do it at some point, we need to start doing it now.
What we do,
That's why-
we
that's
do
why
it
we
as
said
part of
that.
a coordinated process, coordinated not only between ourselves and the state, but also coordinated by the state on a statewide basis among every municipality. Because you don't want to be setting limits in this, for this town it should be here, for this town it should be there. They're trying to get ahead of it as much as they can. They gave us the heads up, and we're testing for it. And we tested for it as soon as we possibly could, first opportunity we were given. The testing period is going to continue through the end of next year, through the end of 15. We're at the end of 14, and we're already hiring a consultant to try to treat for this, to eliminate it from the water supply. So we're not going to wait for an MCL on this.
let's,
We're not going to wait for
let's
them to
keep
deal with it on a statewide basis.
let's keep it moving. Next.
Hello, everybody. Michael Patel, 526 East Main Street. Mic adjustment there. Actually, I keep hearing the EPA actually has a standard on the 123 TCP for what they, as everybody says, the MCL, that's the maximum contaminant level, which is, again, as our attorney said, a very conservative number. And that's 100 parts per billion, okay? 100 parts per billion. We're at 38 parts per trillion. The gentleman before me said other states are already getting ahead of us. Actually, only one, Hawaii, which set their standard at 600 parts per trillion. 600, not 60, 600. I think you're not getting funding from the DEP because there's not an issue here. When they drill down to what is or isn't considered a contaminated well, this isn't going to qualify. It's just that simple. Well, when you look into the numbers and what other states have done and what's going on with this issue, that's basically what it comes down to. We're talking trillions of a part. What is it? 1 in 3 of us in this room is probably going to get cancer living in New Jersey. 33%. It's a sad reality, but that's what it is.
Thanks.
So when you're talking 38 parts per trillion, like you said, if you ingested that your entire life at gallons and gallons of it, you'd probably increase that percentage by, I don't know, 1,000th or 150,000%. So basically not at all. You're not going to change your 33% chance of getting cancer at all if you just bathed in this your entire life at the levels that we're talking about. Which is why I'm here today, because I'm really upset with Councilman Newcomer calling a press conference and basically saying we have cancer in our water. It's irresponsible. It was uninformed. I believe it was politically motivated, which is the saddest part of it, of all of it. I think you owe the town an apology for this reaction, rather than being thoughtful, rather than waiting for the information and the conclusions to be made, to just go off half-cocked, and for no apparent reason, unfortunately, Greg, other than political ones, Friday before an election, to throw our public works department under the bus and try to make an issue where there may not be one at all. And quite frankly, scare a lot of moms and families about what their kids are drinking. I mean, we just heard from a gentleman who's deeply concerned over this issue, which may not be an issue. Again, 38 parts per trillion. Hawaii's already set the MCL at 600 parts per trillion. I mean, do the math, guys. This is probably a lot to do about nothing. And Greg, I'm really disappointed in your approach to this.
Thank you, Mr. Littell. First of all, I did not call the conference. Assemblyman Troy Silverman and Assemblyman Kurt Conway, who is a doctor.
I expect that kind of political stuff from two career politicians. From you, I expected that.
You can
Quite
talk to me
frankly.
offline if you wish. My number's in the phone book. If you want to just talk, I'll listen.
If you have a response to that, I'd be glad to hear it.
No,
If you don't, that's fine.
I'm happy to respond if you want to listen.
I'm listening.
Okay. What I said at the conference is the same thing I've just said here. It's a spill. It had a
It's not a spill.
Well,
We don't know that.
No, I'll just listen.
38 parts per trillion could be the oil that was on the shaft well when they drilled the well. You're asserting stuff. You're clueless to what you're asserting. You're just asserting things based on what? I don't know. Where is there a spill? There's no evidence of any spill. There's no evidence of any significant contamination. And you keep asserting this like we're in Love Canal. And it blows my mind, Greg. It's irresponsible. It's extraordinarily irresponsible for somebody in your position to be doing this. Extraordinarily irresponsible. And I'll leave it at that, because I really don't.
This is the business of the meeting, Mr. Kupkel. I'm happy to meet with you anytime to talk about.
We're gonna do one more, Mr. Hines, we're gonna do one more minute, we're gonna do Mr. Boyal. And we promise, then we're gonna pick up with, resident request presentations at the second part. Sorry, Mr. Zink, I promised Mr. Boyal we would have the last say, then we'll get back to you in the next part. Please wait. Oh, Mr. Boyal.
Thank you, I'll defer.
Go the first, okay. Didn't see you. One person, we have to the regular meeting.
Excuse me, I just have a question. My name is David Klein, I live on Highland Avenue. I've been a resident of Morristown since 2001. And you were talking to Mr. Babcock about the DEP's response. I happen to have a copy of the letter. It's dated June 13th, 2014. It's addressed to Mr. Butler. And it essentially states that the claim was filed too late and that it's waived with prejudice and shall bar all recourse by the claimant against the fund for any damages arising out of or related to the discharge or threatened discharge.
Who's that email from?
Emails from the State of New Jersey Department of Environmental Protection, Site Remediation Fund, signed by Benjamin Martin, Environmental Claims Administration. So my question is simply this. Were you given different information that somehow we can now apply for this fund again?
Yes. And
where did that come from?
Well, from the environmental consultant I spoke to that said that this is this fund is on a first come, first served basis, and we can apply for it next year.
So this waiver it doesn't apply?
Well, here's my problem. You're coming here with a letter from somebody who, bring that person in, let's talk to him.
Well, I think Mr. Butler should be here, frankly, to respond to my question. I mean, obviously, there are people here, there's a lot of emotions on both sides of the water. Please don't interrupt me, sir, please.
I don't see any emotions.
Sir, don't interrupt me, please.
Quiet.
No, I'd like to be heard.
You're
I'm a taxpayer.
You're being heard.
No, I'm not, you're interrupting me.
Let him speak.
You're being heard.
I'm a taxpayer here, you're supposed to listen
I
to
am
me.
too. I'm
You're a
taxpayer
public
as
servant.
well.
You're here in a position.
Okay, sir.
Well, I'd like you to listen to what I have to say.
Sit down.
No,
I think you should listen.
Sit down, please.
no.
Unless it's favorable to you, you're not going to let anybody say anything.
This is a letter from the DEP that was obtained that says that your explanation isn't exactly what the DEP is saying.
I'm saying bring that person
I'm
in.
asking for a
I'm saying
clarification.
bring that person in.
Why don't you produce your written,
I don't have to.
why not? We're taxpayers, why not?
We're not gonna shut back and forth, okay? Mr.
Please
Klein,
bring in your
This is an
stuff then.
opportunity for people to
Bring
speak,
the person in.
not being interrupted by you or anyone else.
Bring the person in. I'll
And as
speak
far
to
as a court of law, I look at your agenda, it says informal discussion.
Right.
I listened to you speak to a councilman, and I thought it was disrespectful. Tell them, talking about evidence in a court of law, it says informed, we're not in a court of law.
Thank you, Mr. Klein. All of
There
your
are people
concerns
here
are
that,
noted.
there are people here
Right.
that have a right to be heard.
I don't know, you want-
And I just asked you a simple question, if you had
And
a
I
letter or
answered
something.
it 3 times.
Because I'm concerned, you said you spoke to
I
someone.
answered it 3 times.
With no
I said-
emotion.
I
Who did you
said-
speak
I said-
to that said that
So
we
you're
could
saying the
reapply?
school fund goes away? That's what you're trying to tell me?
I have a letter from the DEP.
Great, get him here. Get the person here who wrote it, and let's talk to him.
Who told you
Who
that
are you,
there's money?
who are you to quote him? I mean,
I'm
do
sorry?
you work with
Who
him?
am I?
Do you know him?
I'm a taxpayer, and I have a letter
I
that
am
was
a
paid through
taxpayer
Oprah.
also.
Okay. Who did you
Okay.
speak to about, who told you that this fund is still
Unlike
available?
you, I didn't run to the internet.
I didn't run to the internet. This is a letter from the DEP obtained through Oprah. This is not internet.
Along with what else? What else did you get through Oprah? I mean, you come here with
An
one
application that stated that it was applied for.
document. You come with one document.
No, I've seen a lot of documents.
Oh, and
And what I'd like to know
did you
is,
make them
first of
available for
all,
our inspection? Did you
I'm
make them
sorry, what?
available? Did you make them available for our inspection?
you've seen them.
Oh, I have.
Yes, Mr. Babcock provided them to you.
To me.
Yes.
I've seen.
It's a simple question.
I've seen 2 emails.
Who specifically spoke to you that said that we can reapply for the money? That's all I asked.
I spoke with an environmental engineer about this.
No, did you talk to someone from the community
No,
DEP?
no, I didn't. The spill fund doesn't go, you trying to tell me the spill fund goes away every year? Is that what you want
My
to say?
concern is
You
this
don't
letter
know,
says,
you don't know the answer, because all you're doing is come up here, reading a letter saying.
I'm reading a letter from the
gotcha.
DEP that says we've waived our claims and they're permanently barred.
Thank you, Mr.
And I'm
President.
concerned about it.
Your concerns are on the record. Thank you for coming in.
You're welcome.
Okay, we're gonna close the portion of President Request presentation. We
Mr.
will
Mayor,
get
I
back
would
up,
like,
though.
Mr. Mayor, I would like to speak to those things that were said as a point of personal privilege, as is provided in Robert's Rules of Order. Mr. Mayor?
Sure.
Thank you. First of all, it was suggested that I called a news conference. I was invited to a news conference, which was by the Whitwell on our Church Street. I was asked what my opinion was. I stated my opinion was someone created this 123 TCP. It was put in our water supply. I just said that we should find that person, get it out of our water supply, and also I said at that same conference that the person responsible, which is the same thing kind of I've said tonight, should be held accountable. I actually didn't know what Mr. Draws said, and that was kind of really very interesting to me that that process will happen, that in essence, we're going to get that person responsible. As I've not known some things along the way, and I kind of was shocked that I didn't know, for instance, in 2013 about this spill fund, and I said that I was shocked. Those are the things I said. I'm not apologizing for it, I certainly wouldn't. And I thank you, Mr. Mayor, for giving my personal privilege. Thank you.
Okay, well said. We're gonna move into our official action meeting. We're gonna start with a moment of silence, followed by a flag salute. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. We'll move to item 6 on our agenda, discussion. We'll start with reports from members of the council, and we'll begin with Mr. Newman.
Thank you. I just wanted to report that I attended the Perkins layout, that is, the Perkins architects' description of how they were going to go forward, possibly to renew the Perkins building on all floors, which was a wonderful thing about 2.5 weeks ago. There were quite a few in attendance, and the architect, who is HRM, put out a great plan. And also, I'd like to congratulate Kim Bunn and Lynn Schill for putting out the first book that I know of on Morristown. And so if you go to Barnes & Noble, I believe you can get that book. Someone in the audience is holding up a copy.
Not someone.
Thank you, yes, Nancy Whitworth. Thank you, that's all I have.
Mr. Garwood.
I attended both the planning board and affordable housing meetings since our last meeting. Nothing really new on the COA front, we're still in limbo on that, so stay tuned for further updates. Planning board, nothing really, my chatter, we had a little bit of a, we're still working on the sign ordinance, the standardizing signs, and we'll get a resolution on that. That's it. That's all I'm saying.
Victoria?
Just a couple of things to report. A couple of weeks ago now, I had the pleasure of attending the Men 45th anniversary evening. We do the proclamation in the packet, and it was really an honor to give that proclamation. You know, Men does great works here in Morristown and the surrounding communities, and it's nice to be able to be there and celebrate with them. Also, last weekend, I attended the recreation special needs indoor soccer event, which they put on in conjunction with More Kids, which was a wonderful event. It was full of kids. They had a great time. You know, tons of teenage volunteers through Moore's Kids who came to buddy up with the kids in attendance, and you know, it's really a special kind of program that we are building with our rec center and more to really provide a place for these kids to go and have a community, and to invite kids from other communities, because, you know, we have voted in the past that we don't charge extra for our rec programs that are for special needs for kids from outside of our town. So, you know, I'm really proud that we are providing these kind of services to a very important and often underserved community.
Great. A couple weeks back, I'll do this. A couple weeks back, I attended the grand opening along with Victoria and Stacy of the Muse out on Westfield, out on Centerton Road. It's an age-restricted community, and I saw the homes they're building for soon-to-be our new neighbors, and they were really gracious, and we welcome them to our community. And that's the only report I have. Our upcoming meetings will take place here at 111 West 2nd Street, here in council chambers. Our next meeting is November 24th, 2014 at 7 p.m. here for the workshop, followed by a 7:30 p.m. Official action meeting. The following meeting after that is December 1st, 2014, 6:30 p.m. It's the Boards and Committee Dinner, which will take place at the Morristown Community House, 16 East Main Street. Then following that meeting will be a meeting on December 15th, 2014 at 7 p.m. here at the Town Hall, followed by the 7:30 p.m. official action meeting. Any agenda updates? If not, I'll accept a resolution, a motion rather, to adopt a resolution approving the consent agenda.
So moved.
All in favor?
Aye.
Any abstentions or nays? Item 5 on the agenda is best practices. I believe, Tom, that's all yours.
Okay, thank you, Mayor and Council. The actual report is available at the clerk's office, and it was emailed out to council. It's 50 questions. It's an annual best practice requirement that the state requires in order to get the last 5% of your state aid. There's 50 questions. Sometimes I think some of these questions are not exactly best practices, but that's my big point. We did score well enough to receive all of our state aid, and so I'm not going to read the all 50 questions. I'll just go over the ones that were no's or not applicable. Question number 6 was a no. That's one where it asked if we require elected officials to attend. It would be like a formal policy where elected officials would be required to attend at least one instructional course per year. Once we could certainly change that if they wanted to, real meeting, but it would have to be official policy. We do have council members do attend different ones on it, but I felt I had to answer no to that because we don't have an official policy on it. So, but I do know members do go to these. So that was number 6. Item number 8. This was kind of a long one here. It said the municipality's participation in FEMA's National Flood Insurance Program Community Rating System can lead to significant flood insurance premium reductions for its homeowners. Explanation of the program can be found on the website here. And more information on NJDEP statewide CRS coordinator can assist with moving your rating can be found. It says, does your municipality have or is your municipality in the process of of attaining a community rating system ranking of at least a class 9. We said no to that. We're not a big floodplain area, but I can look more into doing that, but right now the answer is no. Number 9 was not applicable. It says that if your ratio for market values in the municipality is presently less than 65%, as the municipality started the process of conducting a reassessment, a revale, obviously our ratio is well above that, and we are way ahead of that. All right, we're really good one. Item number 11, was also not applicable. Does the municipality meet at least once annually to assess authorities they created? Well, they created any authorities, so there's no reason to meet. Not applicable. Item number 26 was also not applicable. As your municipality reported all Superstorm Sandy-related contracts over $2 million to the state treasurer, company, was not applicable. Item number 31 was a no. Elected officials received written status reports on all budget revenues and appropriations. That's my fault, it's a no, because of being busy with working on and moving to the building itself. I did not do that on a regular basis, so I will fix that going forward for the new year. Item number 33 was also a no. I actually thought 33 and 34 was kind of unfair because they took the same type of question, split up. If we were no, we would go for both of them. It said, did we introduce the budget no later than February 10th? We did not. We were in March when we introduced that, which actually is probably a bit better because then by then the governor has spoken, so we're going to do the state aid and stuff, so we have more certain numbers, but the letter of this question was introduced by that, so the answer was no. Follow-up question number 34 was also noticed that did we adopt the budget no later than March 20th? Only if you missed the one, you're going to miss the other. Item number 37 was not applicable. Talked about use of third-party TPAs and that brokers on flat fees when I use a TPA. We don't pay the broker out of our budget. They're paid 3% flat commission from the chosen carrier. So, item number 44 is no. As a municipality instituted a policy to not compensate employees for sick leave accumulated after a certain date. Kind of funny because this question previously, because of abuses years ago, where you would see towns paying out $300,000, $400,000, $500,000 to police chiefs retiring and stuff, right? So the question before this was, did you cap, the state passed the cap of $15,000. We actually, what was less than that, we have a cap of $10,000. The only one who were higher than that were the police. The police were 22, I think. And the previous contract we negotiated down to the states, $15,000. Now this year they changed the question, saying they do not go at all. So changing it there.
Right.
And it's number 46 was a no. It's talked about the workers' comp, and it asked does municipality limit workers' comp benefits to 70% of employee wages. The answer was no to that. The practice has been, as with most towns, we continue the wages with the employee. When the checks start coming in, we'll give the employee that check and then deduct the 70% that's paid by the third party and give them a check for the remaining 30%. That would be something we have to negotiate. It's been going on for a long time. Item number 48 was also a no. As a municipality adopted an ordinance resolution of policy eliminating longevity bonuses. We have eliminated longevity in the contracts for new employees at a certain date, but the bonus, the council uses the bonus for the manager. That was part of the compensation where council felt it was a useful tool in working with the manager and stuff. And that was created. And I think that was also probably a change because this was probably probably a good thing at one point, and then they said it's not a good thing. They do that every so often. There was another one that passed, just to give you an idea, there was that's the no's and not applicables. Again, this was emailed out to council. There's ones that council wants to discuss, either reorg or budget time or whatever, we can try to implement. If you have one that certainly there's one on there I can fix myself.
Otherwise, are you pleased with the results, or?
Oh, we're good. We're gonna get all our state aid and,
Great. Any questions, anybody? Nice job.
yeah, so it's 38 yeses,
Thank
8
you.
no's, and 4 not.
Fantastic. Okay, good work, Tom, I appreciate that. Moving into item 7, presentations and proclamations. Greg?
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. We received 55 responses to suggested Latin mottos.
These are Latin mottos.
Greg, since we actually, you were gonna, at the last meeting, explain everything, there might be some people here that are coming in late to this, could you give a brief overview of what we're doing?
Yes, the Latin motto that was placed on the building was interpreted incorrectly by Google, in my opinion, and as a result, we moved forward, and the town recommended that we go forward with a contest to have the school, the Latin teachers, and people in the Morristown school system and in Morristown Friends and schools in the community suggest a motto that would be reestablished for the building. And the advertisement for that looked like this, and went out in the paper and requested that all entries be in by November 7th.
Which schools participated?
The Morristown Public School System and Morristown Friends primarily.
How many possibilities do we get?
55.
We have room for 55 on the building?
Not a chance. We have room for one. And what I would like to suggest is that we perhaps take these 55 and vet them through the library board and allow them to make comments and perhaps get them down to 10. And then we'd have the 10 then vetted with our consultant professionals, and then we would bring them professors at a Catholic University in North Carolina, was recommended by the diocese in Camden Diocese. And when I mentioned to him that Latin went viral, he was so excited that Latin would go viral anywhere, anytime in the world. So Mr. Mulberry will also be reviewing the top 10 as well as the professor from the University of Pennsylvania. So we'll have that input as well.
I thought a nice thing, and this will bring this to council for the first time to discuss, would be that we get it down to 10, and then we put the 10 either in jars or ballot boxes and let the people at the library vote on. This way we can let the community be part of something permanently. Vote on a slogan, and then the winner, whatever it may be, gets,
Free library vote.
We will not be placing the name of the person, if known, next to the saying, and I will have a sheet that will identify that. And the suggestions from the Morristown school system did not identify the students' names. So once we choose the phrase, then that person will become known, and it's recommended that we have some way of acknowledging them as well as perhaps acknowledging all of the participants.
well, can we fast track this and get this done by the end of December, you think?
I would certainly think so, yeah.
Right.
I'm hoping the library board meets on November 17th.
Yep, we're scheduled to, so if you can get an electronic copy of those.
I will be organizing them. I have a call into Glenn Walton, and hopefully we can move forward.
Okay, that's great.
Mr. Mayor, could I ask 2 questions about, so the town hall, I would ask if Rob Notley could be at a ensuing meeting to talk about the detention base, and I've had some conversations with him. if he could be here to talk about that, I think there's some concern.
I can answer that now. Mr. Notley cannot. Because Mr. Notley is leaving his employment with Gray Hawk.
Oh, my God.
Greg, was it something you said?
Well, is there?
But you asked specifically, Mr. Notley. But I think Mr. Reagan,
Thank God,
I think-
after we're done.
I think-
Is there someone brave on Mr. Peru
Yes.
who is a responsible party to
Yes.
Morgantown?
Yes, absolutely. I mean, I do think, I've
Thank
got
you.
the utmost faith in Rick too. He might want to take a swing at the answer.
Well, you could also have Mr. Rudd.
Okay, actually, yeah, Jim's actually the driving force on that.
Okay, and the second question about the town hall is, I thought about this quite a bit. If we have $136,000 left in the contingency, as I understand several times from the left now, Mr. Notley, we have the ability to have what is called a post-occupancy list made up from those users of the building that would be an asset, and that we could maybe utilize that $136,000. I will give an example of, there is one person who has a corner office who is one of the people in the town who can't see herself in the afternoon. If you put up shades for that person, that would be.
Oh, I got you.
Yeah, no, it's just those values. So if we could discuss that, maybe at the next meeting, it's not an emergency, but, you know, just those kinds of things, I thought would be good. Thank you.
Thank you.
Okay, moving to our second item, it is a proclamation for MEND, as Councilwoman Napolitano said earlier. MEND celebrated the 45th anniversary just a few weeks ago, and I have here a proclamation which was issued by me, which I'd like to read into the record. Whereas in 1969, Morristown churches joined together to become nonprofit, faith-based, an organization known as Morristown Ecumenical, thank you. Neighborhood Development Inc., better known as MEND. And whereas the mission of this benevolent organization was to serve its low and moderate income neighbors by expanding the supply of affordable rental and for sale housing in Bergen County. And whereas MEND's passion for providing safe, decent, affordable housing for the Morristown workforce and other unserved groups, including the elderly and disabled. Whereas MEND acknowledges and accepts the responsibility to be our brother's keeper when it comes to providing safe, affordable housing. Whereas together with the citizens of the township and the township officials, MEND currently manages over 250 affordable housing units at 20 locations throughout Morristown. And since their inception, MEND has developed over 584 affordable units in Burlington County and are now expanding into Gloucester and Atlantic counties. And whereas the Morristown Township Council wishes to recognize MEND for its works towards mankind, its immense contributions, and continuing commitment to the Township of Morristown and its residents. Now therefore, the Township Council of the Township of Morristown does hereby proclaim MEND to be a benevolent organization in the Morristown community, and calls upon the people of Morristown to celebrate MEND's 45th anniversary and recognize its outstanding works. Great work. Okay, moving to ordinances on second reading. There are none. First reading, most of none. So we're at the consent agenda resolutions. Mr. Manager, if you read them by title, but I think we are reading. Probably should have come on the agenda. I think we're going to
Omitting it.
Go ahead.
Okay.
What are we admitting, Mr. Worship?
I would say, yeah.
202-14.
Mr. Mayor, could I ask that I comment on that 202 in the appropriate time, just as it was made up when it was there, just for the sake of commenting on how that came about and kind of educating us a little bit about it, not for a scene change. I don't think it would be changed, but it's appropriate time to comment.
Well, it's gonna go on, I mean, you're free to comment on it now, but it's not gonna be discussed next week, it's not ready for, the wording isn't voted on, and there will be, public comment on this. But I would just ask that when it's on the, if you want, if it's on the agenda, you can comment on it, or you can comment on it now, but.
And actually, I'd like to meet with you sometime and talk about the process of how it came up, and what the process is to be managed. But maybe that would be better. I'd be happy to hold that.
Okay, I appreciate that, thank you, but I guess at this point, we're gonna entertain anything
to remove or to table it?
To table it to the next discussion. I'll entertain a motion.
So moved.
Is there a second? Roll call, or is it all?
I think you can go all in favor.
All in favor? Okay, all in favor? Aye. Abstention or nays? Hearing none, that will be, removed from tonight's agenda, but as we discussed in the further agenda. So now, Scott, go ahead.
All right, so we'll start with 203-2014, authorizing the cancellation of certain water and sewer charges. 204-2014, authorizing the tax collector to refund tax overpayments. 205-2014, approval to submit a grant application and execute a grant contract with the New Jersey Department of Transportation for the Pleasant Valley Avenue Improvement Project. 206-2014, accepting the resignation of Sandy McGuire from the Library Board of Trustees. 2007-2014, amending Resolution 51-2014, authorizing the closure of roads in Morristown for community events. 208-2014, authorizing the tax collector to refund tax and water sewer overpayments. 209-2014, accepting the resignation of Allison Pasternak from the Appearance Committee. 210-2014, accepting the resignation of Deanna Peach Button from the Appearance Committee. 211-2014, authorizing review of compliance with prior annual continuing disclosure obligations, participation in the Security and Exchange Commission's Municipalities Continuing Disclosure Cooperation Initiative. Get that 5 times. 212-2014, awarding a contract to Civic Plus for website redesign and implementation of web content management system. 213-2014, resolution authorizing 2014 budget appropriation transfers. 214-2014, a resolution approving salaries for Fire District Number 1 for the period of January 1st, 2015 through December 31st, 2015.
Thank you, Mr. Manager. At this time, I will open the floor to public comment on our questions on any of those consent agenda resolutions that Mr. Carew just read. Seeing none?
Yeah, you just put it.
All right, seeing none, no members of the public coming forth, we'll close the portion. I'll ask council for any comments, questions, or motions.
Comments on 214, 206, I'm sorry, and 210. I know that both Peach Button and Senator McGuire have long served the township in many ways. I think Senator McGuire in particular, she may not serve in the capacity again. When I talked to her last, she's done many things for the town. I would suggest that a letter at least be given to them.
Of course.
On the hand of the mayor.
I'm ready, and I think we'll do that. Any other questions or motion to adopt?
Motion to adopt.
Second.
All seconds. Roll call.
Yes.
Yes.
Yes. Everybody, minutes for October 6th meeting, council for any comments or motion to approve the minutes?
Second. Great.
Roll call.
Yes.
Yes.
Yes. Expenditures, questions, comment, or motion to approve?
Move to approve.
Actually, I have a question, I'm sorry. Actually, you answered first, all right. I'm gonna give you a roll call.
Yes.
Yes.
Yes. Okay, going back to the continuation of the workshop, if there's anyone who wanted to come forth during the workshop, I know we ran along on time, we had some technical issues, please come forth, and we can continue the workshop. So that would be, requesting presentations of items not listed on the agenda.
Mark Hines, 130 Bridgeboro Road. Two items. One is that on the township website, it's very good to have these documents concerning drinking water. The document that is the EPA technical fact is outdated. The document's from 2009, and there's actually a newer document from January 2014 that's considerably more comprehensive. It's about 6 pages versus the one on the website, it's only 4 pages. It also has a couple of things relative to New Jersey on page 3. That's why it's probably more relevant. States on the last, essentially the last paragraph on page 3, various other states have also established health-based drinking water guidance values, including the Minnesota Department of Health, 0.003 micrograms per liter, and the New Jersey Department of Environmental Protection, 0.005 micrograms per liter, with the references. The reference, particularly for New Jersey DEP, is from 2008, when they wrote a letter to the EPA. So I would suggest township update, most relevant information.
If you have an electronic copy, can you email
Yeah,
it to me? That'd be great.
Are we good to that?
Thank you.
The other item is, and I think Mr. Newcomer just spoke to that briefly. I think that's what he was referring to about process. And from the last township meeting, which I think was October 6th, we had something added to the consent agenda, essentially at the workshop. From my perspective, I don't think things were done properly by process. I'm reading in the township code right now, and I won't go too much into this, but it's section 6-7, ordinances, resolutions, and contract documents. Section C, section 2, and I think it is A. No resolution shall be adopted without prior listing on the town council agenda unless the council agrees by unanimous vote of those council members present to act upon the resolution at the same session wherein it is introduced. And my observation on October 6th was that we added something to the consent agenda, and I don't think it was even actually voted upon as far as adding it to the consent agenda. There was a discussion, but the best I can understand from the record, plus looking upon the videotape, is it was never actually voted upon to add it to it. It was voted upon as a consent agenda, but it seems like it was out of order, essentially, not being the proper process for the township.
Mr. Hines, since you brought it up, actually, that is something I was kind of shocked in. I didn't even vote to send it in, not thinking.
You were thinking of that ordinance?
That I knew that ordinance existed, and it does actually say that you should have unanimous consent in the order, and unanimous consent actually goes back to Robert's Rules, and Robert's Rules for unanimous consent says that you must hold it out, that item that is for unanimous consent, and the chair, which would be you, Mr. Mayor, would say, without objection within the motion, that is specifically, that's the word that would say, please be said, without objection, and then go forward. And if no one had an objection, then that would be unanimous. But if someone had an objection, it would be then removed from consideration. And that's more or less what I wanted to say.
Well, we'll have to look at the process. Certainly, if you think the process was inaccurate, I heard the lesson there. I don't know the statute. This is the first I'm hearing of it. As far as the actual verbiage of it, I was aware of the statute. If we didn't get it right, then we'll get it right at the next meeting.
And I'll like I said, we meet up when I'll provide you with that information.
I think it needs to be voted upon again, that's my understanding.
I'm not agreeing or disagreeing.
I don't think I've ever seen that before, so I can't
That's
think
all
there's
the
been a
time.
precedent, but it should have been voted upon to add it to the consent agenda.
It was
So the
done.
process done was essentially, it's perceived by some people ramming it through, that's.
Well, and there's always a second meeting for, it's not as if it becomes law, there's a second meeting, but it was done in February 2010 with the turf field, which I was on the opposite end of it. That's when it was done. That was when it was done.
I don't remember that.
When it was done the first time.
I guess it has had precedence.
Yes, there is precedent for it, but
Yeah.
we'll look into the process, and
But
if the
yeah.
process wasn't right, we'll correct it.
Right.
Absolutely.
Right, so essentially, I wouldn't think that what's added to there as far as the resolution, which I've not seen, I've just heard it verbally, which is the surplus to be used for tax relief, I would imagine that's invalid right now.
Well,
It needs to be acted upon again.
just two
Well, I
other
can
things.
assure you, practically speaking, tonight we're not gonna spend the surplus.
Oh, I know, and it's just process, you know. I mean, I was upset myself on that process 5 weeks ago. I felt, in my words, it was ran through. But it would seem to be essentially an improper process to do it. Perhaps it was just an oversight, it was an oversight, but it was.
The procedures are in place, and I agree, I'm not saying I agree or disagree, because I've seen it got done. But we'll look at it, and if the process wasn't correct, then we'll go back and absolutely.
Well, if you want me to forward the reference, but it's in the township code, so 6-7.
Yeah, exactly, I got it right down.
Two other comments on that, please. The reason is in township code, and what is called out further than that is that the attorney and the staff are supposed to vet anything, and also there's supposed to be, a document that we get before something is presented to us, and that's called out as well. But I can show you that offline as well. Well, that's why it's proposed. I said proposed.
Thank you, Mark.
Point taken.
My name is Robert Zenick. I live at 626 East Main Street. And I agree with what this gentleman just said, that at the last meeting, there were objections that there was no reason to put it off one more month before we voted on it. It was crammed through. So, and I'm not saying whether I would approve of whether to put the money where you did or wherever, but the process in doing it was incorrect. So what I'm asking is Mr. Grola's next meeting, since he's our legal opinion, to come up and say yes, whether it was or not, publicly.
Well, we'll move forward and correct it if it was not correct. We'll correct it, like I just said to Mr. Hines.
Right, but we'd like to hear. And the plaque that we're gonna have a contest to see. But it seems like if we're supposed to be non-denominational, they have the public schools and they have the Quakers, yet they left out the Catholics and they left out the Episcopalians.
I don't know if they were left out. I think they just didn't submit it. We're not saying they were left out. My direction was every school.
Every school was contacted?
Yes, my direction was every
So
school.
it didn't seem.
Yeah.
Well, the direction to Mr. Reagan was that he contact every school,
So,
every single school.
so if you don't mind, I'll check with Father Damien to see if the school was contacted.
And if he has something they want to submit, get it in. We'll take it.
And
I too will follow with Mr.
Yeah.
Reagan.
about the water, it seems like the more people you have involved in something, the better ideas you can. You could get a better cross-section of ideas. Those two gentlemen, one was Mr. Babcock and another gentleman, seemed, it seemed very compelling. And they produce different letters and for council to say that, bring those people in before you, but other stuff that's submitted, nobody has to bring in the people who write them. As long as it's flattering to the council, you don't have to bring it in who wrote it. But if he has something that is objectionable, he has to produce the author of it in person.
Yes.
And I think that's absurd. Well, it is absurd.
Thank you.
And it was, in the beginning of here, your statements were that you're not an engineer, you don't want to profess whether it's safe or unsafe.
That's not what I said. I said I'm not an expert.
You're not an expert. I did get a recording on my phone or something saying that the water level was safe before, and it still is.
Yes, it is.
Well,
That was me.
I guess you were an expert then?
Well,
and-
no. I'm saying that we shut the wells down based on what the DEP said. Let me finish. We go back to what about you interrupting me. We said
I didn't think I surrendered the floor.
Well,
Go ahead, sir.
you didn't know, but you didn't. The DEP told us to shut the wells down, and we did. Our order before the wells were shut down met all state and federal guidelines for safe drinking water, and it still does. And quite frankly, if we turn the wells on today, it would still meet the state and federal guidelines. So when I said it was safe then, and I said it was safe now, you don't need to be an expert. And I was advised, that's how I was advised, you don't need to be an expert to come to that baseline conclusion.
I don't know. I heard that one of 3 of us will get cancer in this room. I hope that nobody does. but,
Well, Mr. Zink, you and I agree on something. I hope that no one in this room gets cancer as well.
yes, we do. We agree on a lot of things, Mayor Chachio, we do.
All right.
And, I hope that doesn't happen, but in the beginning, it was said that nobody was an expert and they couldn't do that. Yet later on, when there was somebody to attack Mr. Newcomer, it was permitted for him to state expert opinions. Yet nobody stopped him and said, wait a minute, I already had rules that no one could be an expert, we're gonna wait for opinions. But we let that run wild
Not really.
to attack Mr. Newcomer.
There was a couple statements.
Whether I agree with it or not.
People can speak
Pardon
for
me,
it.
sir, I'm still,
People can speak for it.
back and forth, right? So we agree again.
Yeah.
So we, but yet when somebody came up and a hired gun to come up and attack the man personally is just wrong. It's just wrong. And it's up to you to have some kind of fair play to stop that. If it's good for one, it's good for the other. And I didn't think that's right.
Can I give an observation? I'm pretty sure that you've been up here questioning the mayor longer than Mr. Locatel was up at that same microphone questioning Mr. Newcomer.
I'm not questioning him.
Oh, sure you are.
No, I'm not right now.
Oh, sure you
No,
are.
I'm making a statement that if you say to one, you should say to the other. I'm not questioning him.
This is the fourth topic you've talked about since you got up to the microphone.
And is that a problem?
It's not a problem, not a problem at all. I'm just pointing out that you're a little mistaken on your fairness comparison to what happened earlier between Mr. Locatel and Mr. Newcomer and what's happening now between you and the mayor.
I think that what's good for one is good for the other. And,
Thank you, Mr.
and-
Zink. Your points are well made.
And there was just, and I think that, back to the original statement that more heads, two heads are better than one, three are better than none, or whatever, but these guys are pretty knowledgeable.
They're not
Why not?
experts. They're not experts. No way. They're not experts.
They're not, but a committee that could submit a report to the people is a lot better than somebody that you spoke to that you haven't quoted that person's name yet.
Experts, sir. From experts. I'll listen to an expert all day long. Some guy that runs to the internet and spits something up. I can go to the internet and find out that John F. Kennedy was assassinated by the phone company. That's a
Like,
new
he had
landing
this
never
letter
happened.
right from the,
That 9/11 was a hoax. That the aliens built the pyramids. I'm not gonna. We're not
committee and put them in charge, and not in charge, but as members of it, and I'm sure they could give some pretty good input to come up with something, because we want the best solution for our citizens, other than,
Every single resident is free to come to the microphone and do exactly what you're doing and state their opinion, whether they want, whether we agree with it or not, they're free to say whatever they want, they're free to express their concerns, whatever their questions are, but they are not free to come in here and put forth themselves as experts when they're not.
nobody's saying that they're experts, and that he kept saying that he wasn't. He said that he was bringing up that there were letters now,
It's anything on a bad note, Mr. Zink. No, I disagree with you. You should have put while you were ahead.
but you're saying that for him to have these letters, then he would have to forge them. And
Mr. Zinnik, are you proposing that there be
a committee,
an
yeah.
advisory committee?
Sure.
such as our vote?
Why not?
Or, actually, I think that.
And give a
there's-
report
Isn't there a water commit, I'm sorry, there is a water, or utility committee as exists, although it doesn't, it has Mr. Butler on it, but it doesn't have any
Maybe,
members. It could exist.
I mean, if it won't exist, but I'm not gonna create one because.
No, but I think there was one exists.
Well, this is critical, because maybe that little
More
bit,
so than an expert, we hire a consultant, a recognized consultant. You would rather trust some residents.
no, I'm not saying not to hire the consultant, I'm saying that we could have certain concerns that could be brought to that consultant before, instead of saying, gee, I don't know.
I appreciate the suggestion, I really do.
Yeah.
I don't agree with it, but I appreciate you coming forward and
It
putting
is
it out.
critical, because those levels are increasing, they're not decreasing, they're going up. So that's
I
a
don't know.
concern.
Yeah, that's just, I appreciate that, Mr. Zink.
And back to the trash, when we had
Yes, MI 13, are they in town?
pardon me?
MI 13, are they in town?
I don't know, but we do have an increase in burglaries, which we didn't have before, and, well,
Sadly.
we do.
We have fewer burglaries this year than we did in 2012.
Well,
at this
They
point.
get, what I'm saying is they get reported.
And we also have an uptick in the surrounding towns who have not gone with Casworth Enterprises.
Well, and I'm not saying that they're responsible.
No, you're making a huge leap here.
No,
And-
No, I'm not making a leap in that the people who work for us in public works and all police our neighborhoods as well. And they're good neighbors. They're good neighbors who might see something and call it in. I'm not saying that,
If someone from Casworth saw a crime
Pardon
being
me?
committed, are you saying that if someone from Casworth saw a crime being committed, they wouldn't call the police?
I don't think they'd be as good as a Morristown citizen.
No, that's what
Any
I'm-
more than Cosworth would be better at neighbor than you.
They probably would. Thank you, Mr. Zia.
Lisa Petriello, I have some questions, 266 Main Street. Back to water again. Okay, so there's no MCL, but there are, New Jersey does have guidance, and it's great that we were able to, we elected to start testing as soon as we could possibly do that. We collect these water samples, great. My question, Mr. Crew, is when exactly were you informed that there was an issue?
It depends what you mean by an issue.
Okay, so when did Bill Butler first notify you that there may have been levels higher than the guidance in our water for 123 TCP?
Well, technically, like every other resident in town, I received the 2013 water quality report,
Okay,
which would be, if I'm being technical, the first time I was notified.
okay. So then I have a document. Now, I know you might not recognize the document, Mr.
I don't.
Mayor.
Where'd you get it from?
It's from the township. It's from Mr. Butler to Mr. Carew, and it's dated September 23rd, 2014. And it seems like he's outlining to you the issue with the wells and the amounts. Was that the first time you had an official sort of correspondence from Mr. Butler as to the problem in the wells? Because it seems after that moment, within 2 weeks, the wells were, I'm sorry, I don't let you answer, but it seems that after that, within 2 weeks, the wells were closed, so.
It's all like when Wood Burns stands, like come in with a document and try to catch somebody.
I'm not trying to, I'm just answering, I'm asking.
Did you receive, I respect your opinion, but did you receive the water quality report that was sent out in the early part of the year?
Yeah, I did.
You did, so why did you come to a meeting then and say I have a concern?
Okay, well,
What?
that's my other,
Can I answer the
second
question? Let me answer the question.
Yeah.
That letter that you have in your hands, I asked Mr. Butler to put together,
Mhm.
which he writes to me, because staff should not be dealing directly with council. That's how our form of government is put together.
Mhm.
We had someone come to the council meeting a few days before that letter was written
Right,
and bring up that the TCP 123 was found in the water.
right, the day before
He
September.
made insinuations that I personally think, now that I have spent the amount of time I have on this issue, that were an overreaction. I asked Mr. Butler, because council was probably hearing that any mention of 123 TCP for the first time during that gentleman's discussion, to put a narrative together so the council knew what was going on. That's what that letter is. That is not the first time that Mr. Butler and I had a conversation about the issue.
Okay, so then that was the first time that, I guess, in any official way, well, not unless official. Okay, so then we've been notified about this issue that we need to start testing in May of 2012 when we start collecting these water samples. And so the council is not involved in anything until.
The council's not involved in the day-to-day operation of
Right.
any facet
Okay.
of the township.
Okay, so it wasn't really until the September 22nd meeting at the township?
Correct.
Okay, that's what I understand. All right, but back to your question about the water safety report. Yeah, they did follow the guidelines in the UMCR 3, whatever, that they needed to notify, and they did do that in the back of the quality drinking report. However, from your website also is, there was another, I guess, situation with the water in March of 2014, and that was handled a little bit differently. A letter was written up that says, important information about your drinking water. Our water system recently violated drinking water standard. I'm not saying that you violated your drinking water standard with this, but it goes on to say, although this incident was not an emergency, our customers, you, have a right to know what happened and what we did to correct the situation. My question is why wasn't something similar issued for this situation as well?
Very
I
simple,
know
because.
there's guidance, so there's
I'm
no
sorry,
standard.
Lisa,
There
could you
is-
read the first sentence of that again, or what you just read?
I just said, I clarified that what we just did right now, what just happening right now is not a violation, but the point is, the first line that I read was, the first line that I read was important information about your drinking water.
And the second line?
Sample collection error.
Could you read what you read earlier?
Our water system recently violated a drinking water
Okay, stop.
standard.
We didn't violate anything.
I said that.
So,
I
so why would we treat that the same way?
Because the reason why that this is being notified is the logic that our customers have a right to know about what's happening in their water, because it's important information.
If we're meeting every drinking water standard, state and federal drinking water standard, what exactly would that notification to the public say?
I'm saying that while there is no regulated standard for 123 TCP, there is a state guidance, and I would think that this would have merited this sort of response, and my recommendation is that.
It wouldn't, and I'll explain that. The letter that you have is required to be sent
Okay.
by the state, because there are standards in place that are being enforced, and we're obligated
Okay.
to make that notification. There is no standard for the TCP 123, therefore there is no notification requirement.
And I'm just saying, wouldn't you just do that in the effort of just being totally 100%?
To say what though? What would it say?
To say, hey, that, you know what, this, to kind of more or
That
less
there may be
highlight.
something in the water that
That's fine.
that would be the same scare tactic you gentlemen
It's-
talked about
it's not a
before.
scare-
If you believe there should have been a notification, we don't agree with you, let's just leave it at that.
Okay,
Thank you.
I agree. And
What's wrong?
congratulations on your nomination, council. And I just wish you would treat people a little bit nicer that come to the microphone and talk.
Good evening, Nancy Newcomer, 235 Fellowship Road. I'm sorry to keep talking about the water issue, but some questions have occurred to me coming out of this discussion. I actually have two questions. Have there been subsequent tests for TCP 123 since March of 2013 in Morristown? That's number one.
Yes.
Okay, have those results been made public, and what are they?
I don't have them committed to memory, and I don't know the answer to the first question as well, but I believe anybody can contact Mr. Butler. I'm sure others already have, and get those test results.
Have those numbers gone up, stayed the same? Do you have a sense of that?
They have gone slightly up.
Okay, so the numbers that we heard Mr. Locatel give, are they accurate? Or are they reflective of the levels from 2013?
The answer to both your questions is yes. It's accurate, and it reflects where the first test result that was in our 2013 water quality report was.
But the numbers have gone up, and we don't know what that number is. I think we'd like to know. I'd like to know what they are. Is there, but that's all I'll say. Thank you.
Mike Locatel, I think you have the address from earlier.
You have to give it again, Lee.
Mike Locatel, 526 East Main Street. Has it gone up past the 600 parts per trillion that Hawaii has said is their MCL?
No.
Okay. Has it gone up past the 10,000 parts per trillion that the EPA has set for their MCL?
No.
Okay. If you guys do want to do a committee on this thing, it's been done in the past for different things. I would get actual people in the field. One name that comes to mind is Pete Palco. Jeff Dye is another guy that they own and operate environmental companies, environmental engineers. I mean, I wouldn't be qualified as a contractor. I don't think Mr. Zinnick, with his plumbing background, would be qualified. I don't think a restaurant owner would be qualified.
Okay.
Although I do suggest that if Mr. Zinnick wants to sit on a committee on a Monday night, you create one and have it counselor with this one, so he could be somewhere else one minute.
Okay, that's it.
Michael Babcock, 189 Hyman Avenue. I just want to get back to, we spoke earlier when I said, would in the future we have a meeting once the consensus and the information's gathered, and will we have a meeting particularly for that? So it's not like a small window for people to just have to sit down and that's the end of it, or?
I can't say, no speaker, but even if it's just this forum, you know.
Well, I mean, those who will be here, would you be okay with having a meeting? You think it's important enough, other council members, that people would have an opportunity? Because another thing I like that, I mean, you had said that, and I didn't know until the gentleman after me pointed out, it does say in this document, and it's signed, it's from the spill fund, from the gentleman who runs the spill fund, that's a one-shot deal. I don't know, I'm not an attorney, you are.
For that, I want specifics. The spill fund doesn't go away. It's been around for years. So
you said you spoke to someone that said we get another chance. Well, I know you covered the ground, but I'm going to ask a question. If someone told me I had a second job and that possibly getting $2.5 to $4 million, I would definitely remember his name. So if you please, could you give me that person's name or whom you spoke to? No, because do you know who the person was?
Yeah, I know exactly.
Is it the same department?
Mr. Babcock.
I don't think it's an outline problem. Just asking a question.
I think I've answered this question.
But you don't remember who the person's name is.
Here's the answer to your question. We're going to be applying for money to cover as much of the costs to remediate this as possible.
Okay, but you said
Nothing's changed. Nothing's changed.
Right.
If it's the spill fund, great. If it's another fund, I don't frankly care what pays for it as long as something from the state or EPA.
I don't either. If there's something else that will
That's
completely
right.
pay for it, it's not on the taxpayers.
Everybody wants the YouTube moment. You sent me an email. You couldn't just ask me a question in an email, so I had a chance, but it's got to be, come up to the microphone. This goes back to what someone else said.
Well, you sent me an email on Saturday afternoon. I've been doing this for the last month. That's the first email I've got.
Okay, Mr.
2 days before the
What's the
meeting.
first email I got from you? And I was away, and I barely had any internet. I still managed to get off an email to you. So this goes back to the question from the prior lady who said I could be a little nicer to people. If somebody wants to come forward and ask a question, has a legitimate concern, then let's have it. And that's what we're here for. But if someone just wants to come and try to burn me, then all bets
Well,
are off.
I'm not trying to burn you. I'm asking about a particular.
I answered the question 4 times about the spill
Mr.
fund.
Babcock, may I respond to what he said?
Yes.
First, Mr. Mayor.
Sure, Greg.
I think it would be a good idea to have a meeting which is publicized in advance, call for the purpose of talking about the water, just as Mr. Grew had said that it would be a good idea to have a meeting about crime, what are the concerns, and now. I think we should have a kind of a discussion beforehand that we're trying to deal with facts.
Right, I'm just trying to get the facts first, then we'll
Right,
decide the venue. I'm not saying
I
yes,
think
I'm not
that's
saying
what I'm
yes
saying
or
about the
no.
meeting.
There should be a meeting.
I'm not saying yes or no, I'm just saying,
Can I
get the info first, then we can.
If I could just provide an opposing opinion.
Please.
I suggested the meeting with the police department because the fact is burglaries are happening in town, have happened in counties. My only concern with having a special meeting about the water, this meeting was publicized, the water was on the agenda, we had 4 people come up and talk about it. The same 4 people that, most, except for the new gentleman, have already contacted, and you've talked to Mr. Butler about it. Number one, I don't have the sense that there's an overwhelming outcry for people to learn about what's going on. But if there were, I don't know that a public forum where everyone's going to get up and express their opinions, unless they are experts, is going to be healthy. Mr. Butler is more than happy to sit down with anybody, meetings, phone calls, emails, Mike, I
spoke to Bill.
Yeah,
for a while, that's why I gave him all the information that I had, as far as, which a lot of it he wasn't aware of. I'm really disappointed that no one from the state who has
point
down here and done anything, or met with anybody.
If we have a meeting about our water issue, I don't want it to have the connotation that we have a safety issue. We don't. Really what we have is a bureaucratic issue with the DEP. It's really more than anything what we have right now.
And I also would like to my thought of getting out is the fact that I still like to know who the scientist was who said to you, I advise you to shut down the wells, and why? I would like to really.
Actually, Mike mentioned earlier.
Yes,
And he did, and I completely 100% agree with what he said, because they didn't answer me, I've sent 3.
Well, you got the Uber request, what'd you find?
Well, I'm just saying, what I found was what he just said. He asked it, I asked it, he asked it in the email, I seen him, and they didn't answer him, they didn't answer me. And I guess there's nothing that they would force them to answer anything?
Right, I will say this, and I believe it is in the original email from Karen Fell, who was, by the way, the person from DEP that was the original email.
She was a scientist?
No, well.
Gloria, there's a doctor.
Who's a scientist?
Yeah.
From the beginning of DEP strongly recommending we shut down the wells, there has been 2 caveats that I've heard over and over again. One was, we're not telling you have to, which I'm not a scientist either. DEP
But we
tells me.
strongly recommend.
Right.
So what does that mean?
But 2, it's that because we have other water sources to use, at least for now, that can get us through. We have enough water we can produce through our New Jersey American Water contract and the Kings Highway Water Treatment Plant, which did not have any detectable levels of 123 PCP. So those were the 2 caveats that I've been told. So we could all use our imagination to figure out what would they have said if we only had well 7.
Okay.
Well, that's something that you just mentioned as well. We have other wells, right? There are other wells that we haven't used in a while.
The Hartford Road plant hasn't been operational.
Is there a reason why we don't use it, or?
I can certainly find out from.
I'm just sure, like, something like that, maybe as a backup plan in case what would have already happened. They're not ready to use, but have they ever been tested for something?
I believe they have been tested. I believe it would take, Mr. Butler believes it would take over a year to get the Hartford Road well back.
Now, how is this going to affect, I know there was talk about come the spring and summer, like demand. How does the situation we're in now affect us come spring and summer?
Right, what my plan is that once we have the consultant and we've identified the treatment process, cost, timeline, everything else, we'll go out to bid for a contractor who will come in, do the treatment per the specs of our consultant. At that point, we will have a rock solid timeline, rock solid budget. Go back to the DEP at that point and say, this is how long it's going to take. Because the one thing that I think is lost in the discussion of whether it's one chance, 38 parts per billion and one chance per million, it is not an issue where drinking the water today is going to make you sick tomorrow. It's decades worth of drinking. And I've been told that repeatedly by people from DEP. If that is in fact the case, then the request from me will be, and hopefully council will agree, that we get something from them in writing again saying, you're safe to put your well, we recommend you put your wells back on. Because they never told us we had to shut them down, so they can't tell us to put them back on.
In the future, it's going to be cleaned up, so.
If we have, right, we know that it's gonna be 12 months, 14 months, 16 months, whatever. To me, that would be a reasonable request for the town.
Okay, thank you.
Okay.
My name is Robert Zenick. Every business in the state of New Jersey, pardon me?
Your address.
626 East Main Street.
You haven't moved since last time, wasn't it?
No, sir, not yet. But, thank you. Every business in the state of New Jersey is required to have a MSDS sheet on file at their place of business. Maybe we could have somebody check, that's the material safety data sheets of every product that they use in their business. Well, we see who has this product, besides maybe it's some past contamination, but when we see who may be using it now, because the levels are going up, It could be that something's in the strata of the earth and it's just making its way down to the wells, but it would be a start, a proactive, who's using this product, and they have to have it on file.
What I can say is that if the DEP and the township were working together to investigate sources, we couldn't tell you anything until DEP's fully vetted that investigation. Because God forbid we mentioned, and I'm not suggesting that's what you're saying, but God forbid we mentioned, ABC company as a potential source because they manufacture XYZ chemical, and it ends up they're not the ones polluting our water, then we'd have a whole nother issue.
So this ABC company is not close to my house. which you would just
the DEP is as anxious to find out the source as we are.
Well,
Because we're not going to be the only water source in the area affected by this.
I imagine not, but this product has to be, the materials used in different businesses, in all businesses in the state of New Jersey have to have these safety data sheets.
Evening, Brandon Pugh, calling from McCourt. I'll be quick, I know everybody wants to get out of here. A comment and a question on a slight or different note. One, Collins, Middle Court, right behind our new town hall. Just a quick question and comment. I just want to thank council and the TNT committee, in particular the councilman, on our new website. I'm anxious to see it. I will admit sometimes it's hard to find stuff on our current website, so I think it'll be an improvement. The question though, I'm just curious, not everyone hold you to it, what our rough timeline is for having it completed. I don't know if that's something maybe in the next couple of months or 6 months.
The purchase order will go out Wednesday. We're expecting around 4 months, depending on, it's a tough time for me to be involved, because we're in closing 2015 budget. But we will have the staff working with them to develop it. The TNT committee will still be involved on, the layout, choosing the colors, all that kind of stuff, before we present it to the council. So I'd probably say 4 or 5 months.
Excellent, thank you. Thank you, Brad, appreciate it.
Okay, I'll take any more residents coming up under resident requests and presentations, but we will go to, which I may be the agenda. So if you want to come and comment on something listed on the agenda, please come forward, state your name and address for the record. Seeing none, we'll close that, and we'll go to closing comments by council members, starting with Victoria.
Just to touch on the website one more time, I don't think that I really properly gave the thanks to this deserve to our TNT committee, who really took the lead and did a great job on this process. Unfortunately, I think everyone who was here representing them has left, but I just to have that on the record, that they really do deserve a lot of thanks. And just to sum up this water issue and this discussion that we've been having today, it's valid to explore any possible issue with our drinking water. It is especially valid, I think, to question the DEP and their sort of opaque, sometimes troubling handling of this matter. But what it comes down to, we are dealing with very, very small amounts of contaminant at levels far below even the EPA's chronic oral reference dose. I did a little research today, and that level is only at a point where there may be some health effects. They're not even talking about cancer at that point. Now, the reason that I bring this up is that we are doing what is appropriate to handle this issue. Our utility superintendent has done what he was supposed to do all along the way. We have faith in him. What I don't appreciate now, and I'm not saying that it's the people who have come up today to speak, but there are people in our community who have kind of made this implication that council knew that there was poison in our water and did nothing about it. And I frankly find that insulting and absurd. We drink this water too. We bathe in this water, we clean our clothes and our dishes in this water. If we felt that there was a major public health crisis in our town, if you think that anyone on this council would not have immediately addressed that, been keeping some kind of a secret. And to have politicians having press conferences, people who are not experts on this, telling people just before an election that there is cancer in our water. I can't see that as anything other than politically motivated and fear-mongering, and I think it's despicable. And I just have to say this, like I said, let's question where it came from, let's clean it up, let's ask the DEP how we're supposed to handle this, because they're not giving us straight answers. All of those are valid things to do. But I don't want to hear anyone implying that the town council knowingly put our citizens in danger, because it's simply not the case.
Phil?
Thank you, Victoria. You echoed a lot of what I was going to say with this water problem. And I even just made a mistake. It's not a water problem. It is an issue. Mr. Butler did everything by the book. And what we are doing is looking at a solution to make sure that we do have adequate drinking water, very safe drinking water. And, frankly, we are ahead of the curve. And I think as municipalities start to report their numbers, you're going to see that we are well within our safe drinking limits. And, we're moving forward to fix it. And, it did become a political issue. It became political ping pong. And the victims here are the Morristown residents who are hearing one thing from one side, and we're trying to be rational from this side. Now we're going to get professionals in. We're going to get professionals that are going to look at this problem from a scientific matter, look at it realistically, and give us recommendations on how we can move forward. And that's where I think we're going to go. And I applaud that. Now, all politics aside, I'd like to say, tomorrow is Veterans Day, and I would like to give a round of applause to all vets in the room. You guys have served so that we can have meetings like this, so we can have a free country, we can have a democracy, and I thank you. So tomorrow, thank you, vets.
Greg?
Well, I would like to say that I'm very concerned with the public health, and I'm very glad that we've been told several times that the water we're getting now is safe. And I'm really glad to hear that because I haven't really gotten some of the information about this, and I'm kind of concerned about this, in what I would call a timely manner. For instance, there was on the website a fact sheet put up, which I did not receive until the 3rd, November 3rd, which I understand we had in the town before that. I like to get the facts when they come in, and so I would know myself what was going on, one. And two, I think public health is important. And three, I think anything that involves cancer is something that I want to fight against as far as I can for myself and in my position as council. I also think it's important for all of us in council to bring up our separate opinions. I certainly respect what Victoria said, what Phil said, what the mayor said, and what Stacy said. And coming to that, I've seen Commander Delgado is in the audience. Congratulations, Manny, on winning the election. And also congratulations to Stacy Jordan on winning the election. We'll serve together. That's all I have to say.
Thank you, Greg. Well said. Good night, folks.